All right, you guys, it does not get any more OG in health and fitness than than today's episode. I have a treat for you guys. My guest is Kris Gethin. If you're into bodybuilding at all, you definitely know who Kris is. If he's new to you, I'm very pleased to introduce you to him. I met Kris and his wife at a conference back in 2018. And they're just, at events like this, like every once in a while, you meet people that you're like, oh, these are just like real, genuine, kind, awesome humans. And, especially for like how much influence Kris has held in the health and fitness industry, like it was just like, oh, really cool person. And so if you don't know about Kris, he was the former editor-in-chief of bodybuilding.com, the largest online fitness resource. He was the co-founder of Caged Muscle Supplements, also the founder of Unmatched Supplements, Kris Gethin Coaching, and Kris Gethin Gyms franchise. He's the host of the Knowledge and Mileage podcast. He's the author of multiple best-selling books on health and performance. He has over 830,000 social media followers. He was a drug-free professional bodybuilder, also an Ironman triathlete, ultra marathon runner, Spartan competitor, and 50 years old with a biological age of 26. So he has definitely, if you didn't catch from that last part, he's definitely entered the world of like quote unquote biohacking or health optimization, which is no surprise because you can tell he just is pretty obsessed with feeling great and taking care of your health. So yeah, I was so pleased to be able to interview him today. We got into all sorts of things. We did like a little bit of a roast on both the bodybuilding world and the biohacking world because he and I both kind of live in the world between those worlds. I mean, him to the extreme level. And we just got into what the bodybuilding world might be missing a little bit from the health optimization world and what the health optimization world is missing from the bodybuilding world. So that was a really cool part of the interview. And we get into peptides a little bit at the end. So if you're interested in that, definitely listen. And Kris does a lot of educating on that on his social media as well, and inside his coaching. So anyway, if you want to check him out, go to Kris Gethin on Instagram, KRIS at Kris Gethin. And he said that's the best place to just find him and everything he is currently bringing to the world. All right, let's go ahead and get into the interview. Here is Kris Gethin. This episode is brought to you by Peluva. So Peluva, Peluva, those are Mark Sisson's new zero drop minimalist shoe with that distinctive 5-toe design. I have been loving them. I've been a longtime fan of barefoot shoes, and I was very resistant to the little 5-toe articulation personally at first, because just being real, I thought they looked really nerdy, and I was like, oh man, yeah, I love Mark so much, and I get what he's doing, but I'm not wearing those nerdy shoes. And then Brad Kearns, who's also involved with that project, was like, no, Tara, you got to try them. Tara, you got to try them. Tara, just come on, try them. And I tried them, and I kid you not, I enjoy them so much that I actually like how they look now. Weirdly, I can tell. So like the purpose of that 5-toe articulation is so that your toes can move more dynamically. So with other barefoot shoes, like I've been a long time fan of Vivos, and I'm still a big fan of Vivos, but they have just that big toe box, right? Which is awesome. So I didn't really feel like the 5-toe articulation was necessary, to be honest. But as I've worn them, I have experienced how awesome that is. It was actually been quite surprising for me. And I wore them this morning. I wear them all the time, and I'm really, really enjoying that freedom of movement on my toes. So yeah, Brad and I have been going back and forth. I'm like, dude, I actually love them. And he offered to sponsor the podcast with Peluva and also offer you guys a 15% off code, which I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I will gladly introduce my people to Peluva shoes. So you can use code Coach Tara at peluva.com, or you can just go to peluva, peluva.com/Coach Tara, and you can get that 15% off discount. Make sure you snag some of the socks while you're there, because you're going to need the toe socks. Okay. All right, let's get into the episode. All right, guys, I'm very excited for this episode because Kris and I have a lot in common from an endurance background, a bodybuilding style background. Now we're very much in like the health optimization arena, but we kind of bridge all that together. And you are like, I just posted my Instagram. I'm interviewing the OG of health and fitness today, guys. The OG, and I mean, you really have experience in these worlds, especially, being the former editor in chief of bodybuilding.com, all the way to now you're like talking about peptides and health optimization. And then you have this Ironman background. So can we just kind of have it from from the horse's mouth? Like, can you just share your journey in health and fitness and just to set the stage a little bit?
Sure, of course. I came from a fitness background from like extreme sports, like racing, downhill mountain biking, motocross, and I loved that sort of stuff, and it became my identity for a while. So when I'd lost that identity, this is many, many years ago, kind of fell off the track, got into alcohol, got into drugs. I didn't know what my purpose was in life, and it wasn't until I started going to physiotherapy because I had a lot of injuries from these sports. When I went through physiotherapy and actually started doing resistance training, I felt alleviated of the pain and then the depression that I realized later that was associated with that
Hmm.
pain and kind of loss.
Hmm.
And I really enjoyed the feeling of working out and, that pain elevation. And then I started looking into nutrition. And then obviously with less inflammation in my brain, I'm thinking clearer. I'm able to retain content.
And
So,
around what year is this?
so this would be the mid 90s,
Okay.
mid 90s. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I decided to go to college and study international health and sports therapy and nutrition. And because I realized this is stuff that I could kind of enjoy and feel that there was a purpose behind it, as opposed
Hmm.
to when I was in school, I couldn't retain the content because I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be at home on a farm riding on my motorbike.
Hmm.
And so with that, I wanted to get out of Wales at the time because I didn't think there was any opportunity. And it's only until, you're older and you actually appreciate the country or the place that you come from. And that's where I grew up. And so I used that to kind of travel and, put the knowledge out there and kind of learn at the same time. So I worked on cruise liners for a while out of Fort Lauderdale, Miami. I started off as a personal trainer on there, but then I realized that the massage therapists got better tips and I had my massage therapy qualifications as well. So I started doing that. And I only did that for about 8 months and realized, the ship life wasn't for me. And I decided to just go to Australia. I'd always wanted to go to Australia and moved there for a while, did one-on-one training, mobile personal training. After a couple of years of saving up, I purchased my first gym. And then I just wanted to reach out to more people. And the only way that I felt that I could do it, because there was no internet back then, was magazines. So I started submitting content to magazines until they, got published. And then I decided that's what I wanted to do all in. So then I decided to kind of sell up, give up everything, go to the kind of mecca of bodybuilding, which was Venice in California. This was like end of 2004. And I got a contract then with Weeder Publications, working for Muscle and Fitness and Flex Magazine, and that was my world, and I really enjoyed that. And then that kind of got the attention of Ryan DeLuca, who was the founder of Bodybuilding.com, because I was submitting some freelance content there, and I was publishing my own magazine at this time. He needed an editor in chief. The the HQ was up here in Boise. So that's what brought me up to Boise, which I loved. I'm much more of a Boise person than an LA person. I'm not much of a city slicker. And, so I become the editor in chief. And then at that time, Facebook is starting to, get a little bit of traction, Instagram. And Ryan wanted somebody to actually film content to show people how to get in shape, how to put on muscle, how to get ready for a bodybuilding show. Because there was only 30 of us in the office at the time, and I was the only one that was competing in drug-free bodybuilding. So then I started filming the content. So I've gone from behind the camera in front of the camera reluctantly at the time. Now I'm glad that he pushed me in front of the camera. And that's kind of where I got the recognition a little bit online as a kind of like an educator. So that's kind of where the story begun, in Wales. And that's what brought me here to Boise, Idaho.
Wow. Yeah. And just quick note on Boise. First time I went to Boise, I was expecting like potato fields. And I was like, wait, what? Boise's like so cool. So if you guys didn't know, Boise's really cool. It's a really cool city.
Yeah, if you're into camping, you're into mountain biking and trails and hiking and the lakes,
Mhm.
it's beautiful.
And the downtown's a vibe. Like it's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah,
It's
it
kind of
is
like
cool.
almost like gives me certain sort of Austin vibes, but like kind of cooler. It's like very, very unique,
Yeah,
Boise. So yeah.
it's pretty
Okay.
hip.
Sorry. Side note. People don't want to hear about Boise. They're like, Tara. Okay. Wow. All right. So let's see. You have so many life experiences of wisdom because you had the athlete, that whole thing, and then like losing your purpose. Like we could do the whole podcast just on that. You have the whole like not knowing the neurotransmitter drop and all of that you were had from the lack of activity and outdoor time. And you got depression. Then you had the addiction piece. Like we could do a whole podcast on that. But I want to really hone in on this period where you started feeling better, right? And then you started getting into like full on bodybuilding. So, like, you decided to be a drug free bodybuilder, which was probably a bit. Tell me about that. And I find this interesting because I just had a guy, he's 50, 53, I think, at the gym today. You know, he's been in it the whole time, last 30 years or whatever. And he's like, and he's a big guy. Like he has a nice natural physique, but he was like, I met Dorian Yates back in the old days and, you know, everything was small. And I talked to him and he was just like, don't do it, dude. You don't have that genetics. You look good, but you don't have the genetics. Don't ruin your body over this kind of thing. Tell me about your decision not to do the steroids and all that, because that was probably, I would imagine, kind of hard back then, since that was kind of the thing, and you were right in the heart of that whole world. Why did you decide not to do it?
You know, it'll sound really, really stupid and naive when when I say this, because just thinking about it now, I just think, God, you know, reflecting back, it was really silly that I was thinking this. But when I started bodybuilding, I had no idea there was such a thing as steroids. And this is in the late 90s now. And even though I was buying the magazines, I was seeing Dorian Yates in the magazines and all these big bodybuilders, I wasn't reading about steroids in his magazines. And I'm growing up on a farm in Wales. I have no idea, you know.
Mhm.
And when after a year and a half after picking up weights for the very first time, I competed in my first show in Wales, and this was in '99. And I got second place in that show in the first timers. And I remember this person coming up to me and saying, you know, what did you use to, you know, dry out? And I didn't know what he was talking about. And I just said asparagus and vitamin C. And he's like, well, no, anything else? And I didn't know what he was talking about. And then a little bit later on down the line, I'm getting involved into this community now. There's a guy called Daryl Aldist who won the British Championship, and he became like the weight training coach in my college. And I've become good friends with him. I'm living on a farm. I'm swapping chicken breasts for protein powder with him, you know,
Uh-huh.
and thinking the protein powder is going to be better. And anyway, so then I started learning about this, and I didn't really have any inclination because obviously I'm still growing as well at this stage. But it wasn't until I moved to Australia and I actually went to my first bodybuilding show that was drug free. And there was an A and B show, and there's a guy there that was guest posing called Mark Costanti. And I was absolutely blown away about how this physique that was in front of me that was natural. Like he had veins all over his abs, all over his chest, like he was shredded. And of course, on stage under the lights, looking a lot bigger than what he actually was in person. I become friends with him and I started training with him. And luckily, another guy called Danny Chow, who was the natural Mr. Olympia as well. So then I realized what was possible. And I think a lot of us live with very short ceilings. And then we will quickly reflect that. We will look at someone and go, he's on steroids, you know, and could be completely natural. But that creates a shorter ceiling of opportunity for ourselves. And we look at things as possible, you know, impossibilities instead of possibilities. And I could just see possibilities there. So I knew that I hadn't reached my potential, and this is the way that I wanted to go. Now I've got nothing against people who do steroids. So some of my best friends are, you know, IFBB pro
Mhm.
bodybuilders and have been for years. But I still like to do things. I like to go snowboarding. I like to go mountain biking. I know at that size, if I was to even be able to attain, you know, that size, it wouldn't work for me. And I wasn't so concerned about my health span then. So I don't think that even came into the equation. But I did have this consideration once again. It was around 2009, and I felt like I'd reached my natural potential now. And I had a discussion with Ryan DeLuca, and I said, what do you think about like steroids and, doing that, because I don't know what to do with myself now. What's the next thing? And that's when he said, you need to do these video trainers, do these video programs. That's what people want to see, something that's attainable and something that's healthy and something that is versatile. So that was the decision then. I was just going to stay
Mhm.
natural, and that was it. It wasn't so much health purposes, it's just what I wanted to do and what I wanted to achieve. And I'm very, very glad I obviously made that decision. I think, there's a lot of professional bodybuilders out there that do it the right way. They get their blood work done and all that good stuff. But, it's just different strokes for different folks. And I didn't realize, even though in 2009 I actually gave up bodybuilding, I actually continued to grow more after I retired from competitive bodybuilding. So there is a lot of potential there. You just have to tap into it and I guess create doubt in people's minds so people think that you're on steroids and well, maybe I've achieved something then.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I mean, I'm not like built like you, but I've had a, pretty muscular physique as a woman and lean for, the last decade. And I get it all the time. And I get it, right? I understand why people think that because there are a lot of people who lie about it. So I understand why they don't believe people and whatnot. But it's kind of sad to me because I'm like, dude, I am a mom of 4 who used to be overweight and like I'm not tracking my food. I'm like living a very joyous life. Like, don't you kind of want to know what I'm doing? Aren't you curious? But like when you sit there and you're like, no, she's lying. I'm like, dude, I found something cool here. I can share that with you. But when people close their minds, like that's what the difference I hear there for you is like, you were like, wow, what's possible for me? If I really like see what my own capabilities are versus, yeah, just close your mind, like whatever, he's probably lying and so yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to feed your purpose at all, is it? And
Yeah.
there's people. My business partner actually, with my supplement brand, he's a 2 times natural world champion, and people call him Drug Miller, even though his name is Doug Miller. Like he sends
Mm,
me his blood work. He gets it done around his birthday every year. Like there are just some freaks, just natural
yep.
freaks.
Yep.
His testosterone levels keep going up year by
Wow.
year. Every year, you look at his free test and his overall test keeps going up every single year. And he publishes it all online every year. And there's just people out there, you can't explain it. You just cannot explain it. Some of those freaks just happen to come out of the woodwork and apply themselves to that particular sport. And because
Mhm.
bodybuilding is so visual, it's easy for us to point the finger.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, I want to hit on because now, actually, I'll let you explain. Like, where do you live in the health world now? Like, what would you say consumes most of your energy and what you're teaching and working on with people?
It is definitely the health span aspect of it. If people sign up, let's say for training with me and they want the training, they want the nutrition, the first thing I usually would look at is their sleep. And then I'll
Mhm.
get them to follow a sleep routine first for maybe the first couple of weeks before even thinking about giving them training,
Mm,
nutrition, and then supplementation. I guess that is the main thing that I kind of look at because as we get into a world of entrepreneurship and the Gary Breck, not Gary Brecker, Gary V's of the world who,
mhm,
look at entrepreneurship and sleep as a weakness and you got to burn the
mhm.
candle at both ends, it's not good, especially, from a mental, physical, and health span collective.
Mhm.
We have to dictate our performance by our recovery, and we sleep when
Yeah,
we recover. The brain detoxes, the organs detox. So I always look at that first because, of course, if these people have cravings or if they're insulin resistant, the
right.
chances are they're fatigued because they're not sleeping, they're not making the right decisions. So now they're eating crap and coming up with an excuse of why not to work out. And it's a vicious circle that's just all from that source. So I always
Mhm.
kind of look at that first. And the reason why I think I look at that, and this is how I kind of got into the, quote unquote biohacking. In 2014, I was diagnosed by Dr. Spanaug in Oldsmar, Florida, with having mold toxicity. I had no idea what mold toxicity was in 2014. And one of the symptoms that I had was just I couldn't sleep. I'd sleep for literally 3 hours a night. But
Mm,
I had that kind of ego and that kind of warrior kind of mentality. I'll still
yeah.
outwork you. I'll still outtrain you. I'm fine. Denial was one of my superpowers. And but then obviously that just causes more problems because now you're a complete ass to be around. You don't know who you are really because you're not thinking straight. I self-published some books at that time, and I look back at those books now and I don't even recognize who I was writing those books. It's pretty dark
Wow.
stuff.
Wow.
And so with that, I really understood the power of sleep because I started having my biological age tested every year following that because it extended my past my chronological, and I was able to bring it down. And for all these biohacks that we have available to us, whether it's hydrogen or the HBOT and stem cells, now peptides, sleep, I feel has been the biggest component to reverse my biological age every year, just being in that more parasympathetic dominant state. So that's the
Mhm.
one thing that I'm not a sleep expert, but that's the one thing that I try to get people to focus on more than anything.
Yeah, I thank you because I've been saying for a while now, like when I got into bodybuilding, that was a dramatic life change for me because if you're into bodybuilding, you have to fix your nutrition if you're eating standard American diet. It's not going to
Yeah,
work until
yeah,
it. And so the combo of, yeah, I was still marathon running at that time. So I had a high endurance level. Then I got really strong and fixed my nutrition. It led to a personal awakening. Like my whole life changed dramatically. I keep telling people, and I really appreciate you saying that. I'm like, when I fixed my sleep, my circadian rhythm, and got that on lock, it was as dramatic of a this is possible to feel this way as when I first went through my first fitness transformation. And I agree with you 100%. Like, it's awesome. We have Oura rings and Whoop straps and things where we can track sleep cycles now. Because when I get a client that's, they're like, I've been busting ass trying so hard, blah, blah, blah. And like, I'm like, oh, you have an Oura ring. Cool. Send me your sleep cycles. And they're getting like 20 minutes of deep sleep a night. I'm like, I call it free peptides. And I do want to get into peptides a little bit with you. But it's like free peptides, right? 70% of our growth hormone is produced during deep sleep. That's just one aspect of it. As you said, you're going to have all these cravings. You're not going to have the energy to go to the gym. You're not going to have good muscle recovery. Your insulin sensitivity goes down. Like you're overworking. You're working way too hard to get way worse results without sleep. So I appreciate you
yeah. And the
saying
funny
that.
thing is, we'll have the biohackers that usually do it right. They won't eat for a couple of hours before bed, so they're not going to blunt that growth hormone
Mm-hmm.
release. But
Mm-hmm.
we'll have the bodybuilders that'll eat immediately before bed that will kind of blunt that growth hormone release when they sleep.
Yeah, okay. Let's hit here for a little bit because we were talking before the show, and like we've both, you to an extreme level, but I also feel like I live kind of between the bodybuilding world, if you will, and the biohacking world because there's so many gems to be taking. I'm like, I don't know if the biohacking health optimization world realizes that actually the bodybuilding world is kind of the OG biohackers. They're the
Mhm.
ones that figured out all of these little things with carbs and macros, like understanding how to change the physiological responses in your body. And then we've got like the Charles Poliquins and some of these guys that came from that world that are like, hey, let's talk about your gut microbiome and your neurotransmitters and like how all these things interact and sunlight, et cetera. So with setting that stage, my question is like, with you having such a strong history in the bodybuilding world and now being very active in the health optimization, longevity, biohacking, quote unquote world, if you will, what do you see that in that gap that you live in that maybe the bodybuilding world is missing as gems from the health optimization, biohacking world and vice versa? What are
Yeah,
some things that come to mind?
good question. And if you'd asked me that a couple of years ago, it would have been everything. They're missing everything, but they're coming together now. I see more and more people in the bodybuilding space promoting red light therapy for injuries and now peptides, of
Hmm.
course. They're going to get stem cells to help kind of keep them in the game. But the one thing that I think is missing more than anything is just being in that like parasympathetic state, looking at maybe a little bit more of the woo-woo stuff, earthing, grounding, making sure that you're getting off the Stairmaster sometimes and going outside and getting some sunlight and doing your cardio out there. And the breath work, the meditation, we've seen a little bit more cold thermogenesis in that world, but obviously that raises testosterone levels for guys if they're not doing it straight after the workouts. So we're seeing a lot of benefits there that could be plugged into the fitness or hybrid athleticism or bodybuilding world that is yet to reach there. And I'm not saying that it would instantly make them a better bodybuilder or a better athlete, but it could extend their careers quite a lot. Because I've noticed that with some people that I'm working with. Let's say if it's a motocross rider or a bodybuilder, and usually they come to the end of their tether at the end of their mid-30s or something like that. They could potentially get a few more years out of it themselves if they really focused on these health applications. And a lot of it is the free stuff. Okay, maybe avoid blue light in the evening because that can raise your cortisol levels. And now you're not releasing the melatonin, so you can't adequately recover, so you can't perform the next day. That's an easy fix. But a lot of them aren't thinking about that. And much like, we get penetrated and everybody's different. Some people are electrosensitive, some people aren't.
Right.
But ensure that, we are doing whatever we can to mitigate the damage of, non-native EMFs, if you're particularly one of those people, because now, especially at the, in the hierarchy of the bodybuilding world, everything has to be content. Everything has to be around Wi-Fi. Everything has to be around, EMF. And then the other thing I was going to say is that, and this is one thing that I realized when I was consuming so much food, you're eating 6 meals a day, basically. You're not looking at the sources of if it's wild caught, humane raised, organic, grass fed. So you don't care what you consume, but you still think it's healthy. But evidently you may be unhealthy and less healthy than the average population because you're consuming twice the amount of these antibiotics, twice the amount of glyphosate, twice the amount of artificial sweeteners or whatever it may be than the average person. So you're having a lot of issues. And the one thing that I've noticed working with some of these athletes and getting them completely off like artificial sweeteners and focusing on, humane raised and whatnot, is that they eliminate a lot of the inflammation in their body from the joints that they thought they had from working out. It's just a byproduct. I work out, so of course I'm going to have sore elbows. That inflammation seems to go, and the inflammation from their gut seems to go, so their waistline comes in. They feel that they're not as full all the time. They're able to digest and assimilate a little bit easier, even though there's very little studies out there showing that artificial sweeteners can have adverse effects on our opportunist flora, or cause gut dysbiosis, or target the integrity of the gut. It's definitely happening. Because when they reverse a lot of the aspects of a typical bodybuilding diet, they reverse all of the aspects that they feel is normal to their bodybuilding world. So there's a lot there that I think should be implemented.
Yeah, let's hang on that gut health thing real quick. Like, are there other impacts? What are your thoughts on why so many bodybuilders have gut issues?
Of course, well, some of it's going to be drugs,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of it is because you look at all the supplements that they're consuming pre-workout, essential amino acids, electrolytes, intra-workouts, proteins. The list just goes on and on and
Mm-hmm.
on. The vast majority of these have artificial sweeteners in there as well. Of course, there's the colors and flavors and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't see how that contributes to the health and fitness industry if the supplements aren't healthy. Now, of course, I'm sure the gut microbiome can assimilate some of this damage. But when it's getting bombarded all the time, because I guarantee you those same athletes are eating boring, bland food, and they're putting their sugar-free syrup in there that has a lot of artificial sweeteners. They're using their sugar-free ketchup that has the artificial sweeteners. Maybe they're having an energy drink or sodas, diet sodas. Bodybuilders love diet sodas because it makes them feel like they're cheating. It
Mm-hmm.
causes issues. It causes
Mm-hmm.
issues. And I feel this is why some of these athletes fail to get in decent shape as they get a little bit older,
Mhm.
because they're holding more fluid, they can't dry out, their digestive system and insulin resistance has gone up. And speaking of Dorian, like Dorian Yates is a very good friend of mine. Even back when he would come over to the US, because there was no such thing as artificial sweeteners in the UK, you couldn't
Mm.
have sugar-free anything.
Mm.
He would allow himself one packet every day when he would come over to the US for like 3 weeks before the Olympia, or if he came over for a photo shoot. That was his maximum. And so even
Mm.
back then, he realized, if there's no calorific value to this, how is my body going to recognize it, burn it off, store it, or does it become a toxic load?
Mm.
And, what we think is that you'll have this toxic load. It's not going to go into the bloodstream straight away because it has no calorific value to be utilized, to be burned off. So between the bloodstream and the fat cell is where these toxins store. So now the fat cell has a harder time getting into the bloodstream to be utilized as energy. So
Mm.
that's where we think, that this
Mm.
could possibly be happening.
I
You
think
see a lot of these natural athletes, and they are a little bit more cognizant. I've noticed from the people that I work with of what they eat, and they seem to get incredible shape. They get shredded,
Mhm.
absolutely
Mhm.
shredded, and they're not using anything to get ripped.
Yeah, and then back to your parasympathetic thing. I heard Ben Pakulski say on a podcast years ago, this is when he was still doing the Olympia thing, but he was like, somebody asked him, how quickly after he trains does he eat, right? Because it's not uncommon to see bodybuilders like shoveling their food into their mouths as they're walking out of the gym. And he was like, I always wait until I get hungry, which I thought was kind of surprising to hear him say that. And he's like, my theory is that if I'm still in that sympathetic state, I'm not going to digest the food well anyway. So I wait until my body comes down and I get hungry and then I eat. And I was like, go Ben. Like, yeah, I totally agree with that. And I kind of wonder if some of that sympathetic dominance that you kind of just are going to be in, especially if you're a competitive bodybuilder, you're not just like a pseudo bodybuilder, like for personal reasons or whatever. You're competing, like you're going to be in sympathetic state all the time. You are just pushing your body to the freaking max. And so I wonder if that also really down regulates digestion just because you can't get into that parasympathetic.
Yeah, and he's entirely right. It's because you need the blood in your muscles when you're working out that particular muscle group, not in your stomach trying to digest the food. And
Mm-hmm.
not just bodybuilders, but a lot of us today, whilst we're eating, we're typing, we've got deadlines to make, we're
Mm-hmm.
talking, we're swiping on the phone. So we're not conscious, we're not in a sympathetic dominant state to digest, we're not in that
Mm-hmm.
rest and digest state. We're distracted. It's much like going to the gym and performing an exercise but having a conversation. You do not have those neural pathways to adequately contract and relax. It's the same thing when you're digesting. It requires you to be in
Right.
a conscious state,
Yep.
be associated with your senses, your taste, the smell, the sight, the structure, the texture,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a great book called The Slow Down Diet that goes into the science of this to show how much more of the food that you can digest if you are in a conscious state as opposed to not. Because usually if we wolf it down in that in that sympathetic dominant state, we immediately look around and go, well, what else can I eat? Because we haven't been conscious to the fact that we're now full.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we roasted the bodybuilding community a little bit with what they're missing, but we can't forget to roast the biohacking community. And I'll share a quick story that maybe my listeners have heard. I was at one of Asprey's biohacking events. So, the whole hotel is slammed with this biohacking community. And I go to the gym at the venue, and there were like 3 people in there. And I was like, where the fuck are you guys? Like, are you kidding me? You're going to go in there and use all these devices and you're not in here lifting? I was like mad. I was like, you guys are missing it. This is one of the most powerful biohacks you can do, hands down. Stop spending your money on your PEMF blanket thing and get in here and freaking get to work, right? So I mean, I'm in that community, right? But I definitely see that there are some gems from the biohacking world that they're missing. So what are your thoughts on that? What could sometimes the biohacking world gets a little snooty, love you guys, but we get a little snobby. It gets a little elitist and a little like we know better and we're smarter than them. And I don't know, the bodybuilding world does that too. But
Yeah.
what's the health optimization community maybe missing from the quote unquote bodybuilding, right? Like the more general fitness, body comp, sort of, even if someone's not competitive, that world. What could they
They're,
gain from that?
they're missing the hard shit. That's what it is. If you look at the exercise equipment that's even created, we could talk about like the ADX and, the Carol bike. I've got a Carol bike, not shitting on them, but they're always trying to make it as short and efficient
Yeah.
and easy and seamless as possible so you don't have to break a sweat. I remember when Carol bike first come out and they showed me the commercial that they had
Hmm.
some that you were demonstrating in Harrods in London, and it showed the female and the male in their suit because they're going to go and jump on this bike for 5 minutes in their break time, and they're not going to sweat and go straight back to work. It's just that's the biohacking community to a T.
Totally.
And, we have to do hard stuff. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of the biohacking community, and I'm generalizing, just shy away from it. There's very few people, like you so mentioned. If I go to one of those events, it's usually myself and Dr. Dome, the biodentist, and maybe Jay Campbell. Well, they'll go to the gym, Ben. I've worked out with Ben a few times at Greenfield. But that's it. There's no one else there. And I don't understand why. And other than the fact that they just feel that they can purchase their health instead of work for it. Because if I've exhibited at both of those types of events. I was at Dave's event, and it's an expensive price ticket. You're paying over $1,000, I think it was, for a ticket or something like that.
Mhm.
So these people have more disposable income and they feel that they can purchase their health. And I'll throw the money around. I've got some clients like this. But then the other side of the coin, with the bodybuilding, man, they would take out another mortgage on their house if they were to run out of that last tin of tuna. They're dying for that meal and that workout. That's their life. This is a
Mhm.
completely different life. And that's why because you'd think, man, they do ice baths. That's tough. They start the day with that. Surely they can do some more hard stuff. And I think it just requires more education. And when I haven't done I've done a couple of talks this year. I said I'm not going to do any this year. It's just too much travel. And I'm talking about reversing your biological age. And I'm thinking, I'm sure I'm accelerating it with all these flights. When I do a lot of these talks, that's exactly what I'm talking about, is getting these people to move and understand that they can't purchase, they have to work. If they are
Nice.
so gung-ho on ancestral wisdom, look what our ancestors did. They did hard stuff. They
Mhm.
worked, it was all manual labor. They weren't in front of a computer. And, a lot of them in some of their languages, like in, I think it's in Sardinia, they don't even have a word for retirement. They don't know what retirement
Right.
means. There's always movement involved. And I
Yeah.
think there just needs to be a little bit more application and education to not making these workouts or this gym equipment to be so easy. It needs to be extended. It needs to be harder.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that there's a resiliency piece, I think, also, even in like what I see from my more bodybuilding world coaches and things online is like they're a little, how should I say, annoyed with the borderline orthorexic mentality of the health optimization community. It's like nothing suboptimal can ever enter my vessel ever. And I have to say, like, I am kind of like that, right? I mean, I have my air purifiers and my water filter and my clean products and blah, 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 blah. But I also am like, I also understand where my bodybuilding coaches are coming from is like, I certainly hope that my body can handle some quote unquote imperfect things every once in a while. So I
Yeah.
see like, I'm like, you're girls, you're both pretty. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, there's value in what both of these messages are saying. And I think we are bridging, but I still see a lot of fighting between those worlds of who's right and kind of mocking of like, oh my gosh, get out of here with your freaking perfectionist mentality from my bodybuilding community. And then the bodybuilding, I mean, the health optimization community is a little like snooty, like they just don't know any better because they're idiots. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Yeah,
the
let him
resiliency
think.
piece.
Let him think that. I think when you get caught up in quantification so much, and you become a science experiment, then you just think so scientifically, and you don't have any logical thoughts. And you got to have that. Like what I can't even remember. I've got an aura ring on. I've got different rings.
Yeah.
Like, is this aura? It doesn't fit in this charger. This is the aura. But I just took off, all my wearables for, I don't know, like 6 8 weeks recently. I just put it on. Is this there by the shower? I
Hmm.
thought, I guess I should start putting it on, and just doing it every now and again. I'm not going to wear my, CGM all the time. I'm
Right.
just going to do that every now and again. Maybe I'm going to
Exactly.
experiment. Maybe I'm going to try some peptides and see if it does cause any sensitivity or resistance, if it helps with sleep. And that's it. I don't need to
Hmm.
wear it and live by it all the time. It's
Right.
much like going out and doing your cardio and always having the headphones on and listening to a podcast or answering calls. Then you're not really enjoying nature out
Yeah.
there and the sky and, having value of where we live in the world. And what I did like a 10-day silent retreat once, a Vipassana,
Mhm.
and it was doing something like that made me realize how much of our life we actually miss when we are focused so much on one thing. And that could be the peak of your biceps or reversing your biological age by a year. And you have
Hmm.
to just be and be
Hmm.
okay with just being, but being conscious of where we are in life and kind of not being distracted by it, because then we don't have any value for ourselves.
Yep, 100%. I mean, meditation has changed my life. It's part of my coaching. It's probably, I'm sure you can teach that to your clients too, but being able to let go of the busy mind and be able to be and like being with yourself, right? That's a whole journey in and of itself. I think a lot of the hesitation or the fear or the I don't have time or whatever to meditate is I don't like how it feels
Yeah.
here. And I don't know how to quiet my mind. And when it's busy, I don't like what's going on at all. So I'm just going to start doing something. And
To
like that.
distract yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always used to say, I don't like to think too much because it makes me think too much. And
Yeah.
you can get into that circle. I got a question for you. When you meditate, do you use any biohacks? Are there any devices that
Yeah.
have helped you? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I do.
What is it?
I mean, for many years, I'm a 7 to 8 years in of a daily practice, right? So
That's
I've
great.
done a lot of different things. Currently, you probably know Dr. John Lawrence out of
Yeah, yeah,
Sarasota.
yeah.
So
I have all of his suppositories and stuff.
yeah, all his
Zen.
I was like, "John, you can never make a boring supplement." He wouldn't, but he
Yeah.
has yeah, so I use his Zen spray before
Oh,
my
okay.
meditation. I
Got it.
really like that. I use breath work, right? Like I'll just do some simple like Wim Hof approach or something similar to that to just get myself into that. I don't even know how to put. I feel like it's like gravy. It's like my whole state is just like there, you know.
Yeah.
There is something called the neurovisor that I
Oh,
really
yeah,
like
yeah.
that
I know the
sometimes I'll
neuro.
use.
Okay.
That's a crazy, but most of the time it's going to be Zen spray and silence.
Interesting. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How about you?
I'll try the Zen spray. I think I tried it at the expo there once, but obviously I wasn't in the right spot to do it. Yeah, even though I've done like the 10-day silent retreat, coming back into the real world, it's very difficult for me to switch my brain off. So, I'll always go
Mhm.
to bed like 45 minutes before I go to sleep to actually read a book. And that's
Mhm.
not about entrepreneurship or anything like that. It could be House on a Prairie, something where I'm going
Yeah,
to escape the reality
exactly.
of today and kind of lull myself into the sleep. And
Mhm.
I know, Dr. Patrick Porter, so I've got the
Mhm.
brain tap. I think that's great. But the one thing that works really well for me personally is the Muse. I don't know if you've used a
Yeah,
Muse.
yeah.
And the reason why I like that is because you have to be conscious the entire time to quieten the noise that comes through the speakers of your headphones or your phone that comes through. And that could be the sound of the ocean, or it could be a park, it could be a river or
Right.
wind or a storm. But that becomes louder and louder the more your brain becomes louder and louder because it's got an EMG. So I really like that
That's cool.
because the
Yeah.
second my monkey mind goes off, it instantly gives me that feedback,
Yeah.
quieten. So that's what I really like. It's probably half the price of the Dr. Patrick's brain tap, but it just
Yeah.
works for me. And but you know, it's different. I do like the brain tap, but I do have to have a device. I hate to
Yeah.
say that, but for me to have a proper one, you know, I will lean on the biohacks then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about using tools, right? Like, I'm not the kind of person that's going to try to get my arm amputated without anesthesia. You know, it's like, why would I not take the anesthesia when I have it available to me? Yeah. Okay. Muse, thanks for that. Yeah, Neurovisor is really cool. Neurovisor is crazy.
I
I don't know
wanted
if,
to try that. Like I was at the Health Optimizer. I've seen it at a few places, but there's always a line when I happen to be walking to the
okay.
expo, and I'm not usually like chilling around the expo. I'm walking through, and there's a line there. So I never had the opportunity to try it.
It's like a psychedelic experience. It's like my youngest, he's almost 13. He's very like intuitive, very empathic. He got done. He's like, I just like left my body. Like I was somewhere else. I'm like, yeah.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
really
Yeah.
cool.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure Sean Wells told me the same thing when he tried it. He said it was
Yeah.
something like a journey.
Yeah, they call it drug-free microdosing. It's pretty cool. But I also want to be able to get there sometimes just with breath. I mean, honestly, just doing a doing like 30 of those, you're gonna get pretty calm. So
Yeah.
that also for people out there. But the Zen spray, heads up, it does have hop in it. So if you're gonna do that, just know your brain is gonna be on fire and you're gonna be freaking out and you could puke. So just you've been warned. Okay. This is what I wanted to kind of wrap this up with asking you. Like, so I have my like I like when I look at my day, there's like certain things that like I'm gonna have those, and that's gonna be like getting to. I mean, of course, I was gonna say getting to bed early, unless I choose to sacrifice it for something, which I do have a Polo and Pan concert tonight, which I will gladly sacrifice my early bedtime for.
Who was that? Who was that?
Polo and Pan, do you know them? They're
No,
like
I
a
don't. Was
house EDM from
Oh,
France.
okay. Got it.
They're
Got
the
it.
coolest. Check
Awesome.
them out. I actually
Perfect.
I found them when I was visiting John Lawrence. Who was it? The guy that runs the Third Wave, the
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
microdosing.
Noon or something. Noon. Is that him?
No, it's
Um.
Paul. I forgot Paul's last name right now. He's been on the podcast, but he runs the Third Way. Anyway, he was playing. I was like, "Who is this?" He's like, "This is Polo and Pan." I'm like,
Okay.
so I've
Cool.
become a
Well, I
huge
went
fan.
to see Gary Newman last week, so that was a late night, and I was in LA
Right.
and watched Oasis the
Oh,
week
nice.
before, so that was two late nights. So I can get where you're coming from here.
Yeah, sometimes it's worth it, but
Yeah.
like generally, unless it's something like that, early bedtime, like getting sufficient sleep, having my meditation time, my gym time, those are kind of like my supplements. Those are like my staples. Like what are your staples? And then in addition to daily staples, like your sometimes like really important things to you for your health, well-being in general.
Did you say supplements? Was that what you said? The last bit?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, yeah.
supplements.
So
Mhm.
the first bit for me is definitely ice baths. You know, I
Mhm.
learned about cold thermogenesis. We called it blood shunting in the mid '90s. You know, for recovery straight after rugby. You know, rugby's being a national sport there. So I love that, and the reason being is because. Look, I can be a bit of an arsehole. I've recognized that. And so I need mental stability. And I find I'm such a better person to be around if I have my cold thermogenesis.
So you
So
do
I
that every morning?
every morning, yeah, I'll do it every morning. I'll usually do it for like 3 minutes in the morning and sometimes a minute in the evening. Or I have something called a cryo shower. If you don't know what that is,
Mm.
check it out. I know the owner is from the UK, lives in Portugal now, I think, but it's phenomenal. And so it's like a cold, like really, really cold showers are harder than ice baths for sure
Yes.
because it's
Yes.
one
I just
side
did
then the
one.
other. Yeah, it's tough. So I love
It's
my cryo
brutal.
shower. So sometimes I'll do that in the evening for like a couple of minutes.
Wait, hold on. So I'm not familiar. Just real quick. What is this? Like what is the device like? Like how
So
are you doing it?
yeah, basically, so you know, you have this box, and it comes with all these a mold of for big ice blocks, and you throw it in there, and you've got two pipes, and it'll run your normal water through the pipe into the
Oh.
shower head. So you've got about 5 minutes worth of like really, really cold water there.
Whoa.
You just fill it up,
Cool.
before you want to do that. Yeah, literally cool.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that. You know, that is one for me. That's a non-negotiable. And then movement, of course, I have to move in the morning. That could
Mhm.
be going for a run. It could be going for a swim. In this weather at the moment, before it starts going cold, there's a club just down the road. So I love going for a swim in the morning. I'm the typical Ironman bike, run, swim. I'll choose usually one of those for my cardio. That is like my active meditation. So
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
I'm not going to get on the muse, which maybe I'll do it a couple of times a week. It could be active meditation where I just
Yeah,
have no distraction, and that's
totally.
a form of meditation for me. And stretching. As I'm getting a little bit older, I've noticed I'm getting a bit tighter. And those injuries that I had so many years ago, because I've torn
Mhm.
my trap, my lat, my pec, my
Yeah.
hamstring, tricep came off the bone a couple of years ago,
Mm.
snowboarding, shoulders separated, both operated on,
Mm.
cartilage come out, and all these things that you
Mhm.
kind of forget about and you recover from so easy when you're younger
Yeah.
seem to catch up as you get a little bit older and you forget about them until you obviously you can't forget them. So stretching is a big one for me.
Cool.
That
Mm.
that's an everyday. And like I said, at nighttime it's always asleep. And I have to have full on sleep hygiene. So, I've had like Brian Hoyer from Shielded Healing come through the house to ensure there's no dirty electricity or EMF in the bedroom. I've got the air filter like the Jasper, the U-block
Mhm.
blinds, the weighted blankets, the
Yeah.
chili pad, all that sort of stuff to
Yeah.
really, really help in that regards. And from a supplemental standpoint, I really like to go high on antioxidants. Knowing that there's so many free radicals in our environment now. And so, that could be in the form of hydrogen. I inhale hydrogen, but a lot of the time I'm taking the tablets. I'll do carbon C60, my Vital C, which is the ESS 60, which is a human grade of that
Mm.
C60. I'll do something called Cell Shield, which glutathione is that main ingredient in there to help with help with oxidative stress. Methylene blue, I'll do that every now and again. I do something called a Leuco blue, which has an extra electron, so you don't have
Mm.
to take as much of it. It goes really, really
Okay.
well with hydrogen. And I have to have like creatine with guanidinoacetic acid, cregatine, it's called,
Mm.
because I find that combination really wakes up my brain in the
Cool.
morning. Not like a stimulant, because I don't do caffeine. I do
Mm.
like paraxanthine,
Yeah.
paraxanthine? Yeah, yeah. So
Sean
yeah,
Wells.
you would have seen these at the expos. I'm not sponsored by them, but I'll drink them every now and
Hmm.
again, the paraxanthine. But I find that combination in the morning gives me clarity in the morning.
Nice.
It's
Nice.
like really feeding the mitochondria that's in my brain.
How often do you lift these days?
Be 4 or 5 days a week. I'll train for about 45 minutes.
Yep. Me
Yeah,
too.
and it could change. Sometimes it's a typical bro split. Sometimes it's more of a
Hmm.
functional workout.
Right.
Sometimes it's circuits. As long as I
Cool.
get something in.
Yeah, same. And then last thing I did say I'd hit on peptides, and I know we don't have
Sure.
time to really get
Oh, no,
into
no, it's
it,
fine.
but just in general, I'm noticing a lot of people still aren't familiar. So if you could just do a quick like what peptides are. I know that's kind of hard to say because there's so many different things they can do, but what they are and why you like them. I
Yeah,
guess I'll put it
so
that way.
I'll tell you why I like them because my introduction to them in 2017 really helped me heal
Hmm.
from a shoulder injury. I tore my supraspinatus and infraspinatus, and I was speaking to Nick Andrews and Jay Campbell back then. They said, "Hey, try this, like what we know now as the Wolverine stack,"
Hmm.
and I was just blown away about how quickly I was able to heal with that. So that was my
Hmm.
introduction to it. So these are small molecules of amino acid sequences that we have in our body, and they will replicate dependent on what we're trying to fix in the body, whether it be a bioregulator for our pineal gland, our liver, our kidney,
Hmm.
eyesight, whatever, or your standardized peptides, like we just spoke
Hmm.
about, like your BBC 157,
Hmm.
which is body protective compound, and then the 157 is the sequence of those amino acids. That
Hmm.
actually, it's basically a signal. So it's not a synthetic form like you think about growth hormone, for instance,
Right.
that's synthetic that will shut down your body's own release. But you have these growth hormone secretagogues, they're called, like a tesmorelin, ipamorelin, CJC, that is a signal to
Hmm.
allow your body to release its own hormone. So if you're deficient and you have an issue within your body, it will actually get rid of obviously that deficiency, but it'll allow your body to produce what
Yeah.
is required to heal.
Yep.
and function. And I think they're absolutely phenomenal. Of course,
Totally.
they're research peptides. So, there are some that are FDA approved, like your tesamorelin. That's, basically a HIV drug. But what I've seen and what I've witnessed is unbelievable with these peptides. I'll give you one example. Um, I snowboard a lot and I get into all these accidents, and everyone around me is telling me, you need to stop, but I'm not going to stop. I
Mm-hmm.
still love extreme stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I knocked a big chunk of cartilage out of my shoulder. And I thought, oh, that's because I've got an anchor in the shoulder. And I
Okay.
thought I'd knocked the anchor out. And I saw
Mm.
my doctor. He said, no, you've actually knocked a big chunk of cartilage out. I thought, okay, that's new. How do I fix that? He said, there's nothing you can do. I said, you're
Mm.
kidding me. I even spoke to a surgeon in New York that does 3D printing of cartilage, couldn't do anything.
Wow.
So I thought, okay, there's a place where I go for stem cells in Mexico. I've been 4 times now, and they've been absolutely life-changing for me.
Mm.
And I spoke to Scotty down there, and he said, stem cells aren't really going to do anything, but they're not going to hurt. I went and had them done anyway, didn't do anything. So I thought,
Mm.
okay, last chance saloon. I've got Sigma. Sigma is an oral bioregulator,
Mm.
specifically for cartilage. And then there's one called Cartilax, which
Mm.
is an injectable bioregulator. I thought, okay, because I like to do things in isolation. I'll do that for month 1,
Mm.
month 2, and then month 3, I'll do them both together. I did
Mm.
1 month with the oral, grew back my cartilage.
Wow.
Would you believe it? And I'm thinking, how does this oral know the signal not to go to anywhere else in my body, but go there? It
Yeah.
is unbelievable. It just
Seriously.
it's kind of like stem cells, where it kind of homes in like a Polaris missile. It knows where the inflammation is. It
Mm-hmm.
knows what it needs to fix, and that is
Mm-hmm.
it. It's unbelievable, unbelievable.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I'm doing the Wolverine stack with Ipamorelin and CJC right now. I did BPC back in 2017 when it was kind of becoming a thing. I did one round of Ipamorelin, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and then I just haven't done peptides since, right? But I had this knee issue going on. And you know how it is. You're like, well, let me see if I can just kind of get it to heal, go to the chiro, get some sports massage, let it rest, blah, blah, blah. I like this has been going on for almost a year now. And I am like, why didn't I do this sooner? Like, I
Yeah.
cannot believe not only how fast my knee is healing, like, it pretty much, I'm like, I think it might be good after less than 2 weeks. It hasn't even been hit 2 weeks yet. And it already feels, I'm not going to push it yet. I'm going to keep going. But my whole mood, my energy, it makes me want to cry. I'm like, man, anybody over 40 needs to be doing a round of this every once in a blue moon because
Oh
it's just
yeah.
incredible,
Yeah.
incredible. So,
And that's why I'll probably do Sigma and cartilage like once a year, much like I'll do like an
right.
epitalon and pinealon, just to help with my biological age or resetting the pineal
Hmm.
gland or telomeres. I think we should do the same if we want to prevent the onset of aging as we progress. Much like stem cells, I'll probably do stem cells every couple of years
Yeah.
to continue to heal as well.
Yeah.
I've been able to save myself from having meniscus surgery, from having stem cells. I just think what we have available to us today is
Yeah.
unbelievable and can
Hmm.
greatly improve the way of life.
Absolutely. Well, okay. So tell everybody what you're up to. I know you're offering like a coaching thing. I don't know if you're doing events or let's just tell everybody what to check out from you.
Sure. Yeah, I do online coaching. People can just basically reach out to my Instagram. It's Kris Gethin, Gethin. The next event that I have is a bodybuilding show, which will be the Mr. Olympia. So I'm going to be
I
down
don't
there
know if you guys
exhibiting
have heard of that one or
the Mr. Olympia in Vegas. Yeah. So we're going to be exhibiting there with supplements. I'm actually going to be speaking at the Olympia University as well with
Mm,
Jay and Ben Pekulski as well on peptides there. So that's going to be the next event. Then
cool.
the next event after that is just an event in Texas, and then going to go on a Disney cruise at the end of the month with my nieces and nephew. I'm looking forward to
Oh.
that. I'm not going to get in shape for the Olympia. I'm going to get in shape for the Disney cruise.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we'll link that up, and of course, you guys can find all of his many other things on your website, right? Is it Chris?
Yeah, yeah, Kris, or
Or
they just go to my Instagram. That's
just go to
probably the best
Instagram.
way. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, at Kris Gethin, we'll link it up. You guys probably already follow him, but just in case, we'll link that. Kris, thank you so much. Thank you for like not only everything that you've like already done in the industry, but continuing to lead forward with like the next new, most interesting things. And, I met you and your wife many years ago at an event. I told Kris before we started.
2018 it would have been, I think.
2018, yeah. And
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, real ones. You guys were just so sincere and cool. And I was like, oh, I love meeting people like that at events. So yeah,
We're
I
not
just
qualified to
appreciate
be
you.
anyone else, are we,
Yeah, it's appreciated. All right. Well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Inside Out Health Podcast. I hope it's been helpful to you in your journey. If you think that it might be helpful to someone you know, please share it with them. Please share on social media. It really helps me grow the show and reach more people with these amazing messages. And if you could be so kind as to rate the show and possibly even leave me a review, that really helps. So much thanks in advance if you do that. And yeah, please subscribe if you want to hear more of this type of content. I have lots of amazing expert guests on the way. All right. Thank you.